This is for my persuasive speech, my captive audience. I found them outside of Walmart and I took them home with me. And I'm holding them prisoner. All right. No, that was funny. I'm sorry. All right. Well, today I'm doing a speech on the ineffectiveness of abstinence-only sex education.
Of course.
Applause. Woo! All right. Y'all are so cute. So, what is abstinence-only sex education? Any guesses? No, I'm just kidding. It is a method of teaching sex that encourages teenagers to abstain until marriage. And it's the only way to 100% prevent pregnancy or the transmission of STIs. So in theory, it seems like a pretty darn good idea, especially because talking to kids about sex can be a little bit uncomfortable. What's the problem though, y'all? Well, the United States has the highest rate of teenage pregnancies and STI transmission of any developed nation.
Good.
Not so good. Placing an emphasis on waiting until marriage has, until very recently, implied a heteronormative standard that is just not very nice. And it also places an emphasis on dated constructs, virginity, purity, and it pushes the ideals of a moral system that not everybody adheres to and shouldn't. It really kind of pushes the boundaries of separation of church and state, with the feds funding this. So, what are some of the effects? Teenagers still indulge in sex acts, but ones that aren't considered sex. Oral sex, anal sex, mutual masturbation, etc. These can still transmit STIs, even though they can't get pregnant from that, hopefully. Teenagers still indulge in sex. Because why not? Who does it? I mean, telling somebody not to have sex isn't going to make them not have sex. Teenagers aren't given the knowledge of how to protect themselves effectively. So, this big thing right here is Section 5 of, and this is one of the abstinence-only sex programs that's still federally funded. And states and counties that adhere to this program have to follow this all to a T. So it has some normal sounding things in it, such as G here. It teaches young people how to reject sexual advantages and how to and how to protect themselves from alcohol and drugs, like how that can increase the likelihood of a bad sexual encounter. But then it also has some kind of screwy things in there, such as teaches that abstinence from sexual activity is the only certain way. Oh, well, no, that one's good actually. Teaches that sexual activity outside of the context of marriage is likely to have harmful psychological and physical effects. That one's crappy.
Is it backed by science?
No, it is not. Let's see. No, because actually there was a federal study done about abstinence-only programs that surveyed a bunch of them that were going on at the time, and versus ones that covered contraceptives. And the ones that covered contraceptives were more, the children from there were more likely to not be pregnant or have STIs. But children who went to the abstinence-only programs were still more likely to get knocked up or, you know, crabs or something. So we don't have as many abstinence-only programs anymore in the United States that are federally funded, just the one, Section 5. But unfortunately, it's been taken overseas to less developed nations. PEPFAR is the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief. It's a federally funded program that's supposed to help people in less developed countries combat AIDS, like I said. And it teaches an ABC rhetoric. A, abstinence. B, be faithful. C, use condoms. Sounds like a pretty good program, but unfortunately they're not allowed to give out condoms, and because of their inhabitants in these countries, condoms have actually become harder to obtain.
Is faithful referring to a monogamous ideal or a religious-based perception?
I would say a monogamous ideal.
Okay.
Good question. So, Abby Wilkerson summed it up best in her article, I Want to Hold Your Hand, Abstinence Curricula, Bioethics, and the Silences of Desire, by saying abstinence-based programs have little to no effect on age of sexual initiation, number of sexual partners or rates of abstinence, use of condoms, vaginal sex, pregnancy, or sexually transmitted diseases. And the conclusion is, be cool. The reason I decided to write about this was two main reasons. One, when I was younger, I went to a school that taught abstinence-based sex education, and the teacher told us really horrible things. I had a healthy desire when I was a child, like most children do, have a strong fantasy life, and curiosity, but this teacher made me feel very ashamed. She told us that if we were to have sex in our teenage years, girls would become deformed, that their vaginal walls would tear. She told us that anything to do with the penis would get a girl pregnant, whether it was oral sex, anal sex, whatever, coming in contact for a young lady with a penis would get you pregnant. And it made me very fearful and ashamed, and I held on to those things for a very long time. And the second reason I decided to look into this and research this was because I have been an exotic dancer during my college years to help me pay for tuition and rent and everything. And I work with a lot of women who had babies at a very young age and are stuck doing this work. And not that it's not a lucrative job, but when you take into account all of the costs it takes to raise a child on one's own and all of the costs of living, it really doesn't amount to much. You can't save much money. So it becomes a cycle of poverty, having to adhere to these moral standards that aren't even necessarily your own. So it was very relieving when I found out that most sex ed programs cover contraceptive use now in this country, but there's still a few yokels out there who are against it, and it's a real shame. But thank you all very much for watching and coming, and I hope you all have a nice day. All right.
Woo!